everyone. I'm your host, Brittany Jones Cooper, and welcome back to Build. Today, I'm sitting down with John Legend. The EGOT winner earned 2 more Grammy nominations this week, was recently crowned the sexiest man alive by People magazine, and is, yes, give it up for that, and is one of the beloved hosts on The Voice. Today, we're going to talk about all of that and John's activism, starting with the important work he's doing with Procter Gamble to address racial bias and inequality. One of those initiatives is called The Look, and it's a short film focusing on the unconscious bias faced by Black men in America. Take a look. Put your hands together for John Legend.
Hello. Thank you.
What's going on?
It's so good to be here. What a nice vibe.
So good to have you here.
Yes.
I mean, as I mentioned in the intro, you have a lot of things going on.
A lot.
But I do love that you are using your platform to raise awareness for issues like this.
Yeah, you know, we've been collaborating with Procter Gamble on this, and what I love about what they've chosen to do with their platform, they have a lot of reach, they have a lot of customers, they spend a lot of money on advertising, and you know, they could just use that money to sell products, but I think they want to get closer to their customer, talk about the real issues that human beings face, and they've talked about it when it comes to masculinity, and now they're talking about it when it comes to racial bias, and I think all of these issues are important for us to talk about, and they're such important parts of our lives, the way we live on a daily basis. And we saw that in the video kind of on a really micro basis, just little things that happen in people's day that Black men, I think, are very accustomed to feeling and seeing, and other people might not be aware of those feelings that we have and things that we notice all the time. And of course, those are smaller instances, but of course, those kind of grow into much bigger instances, interactions we see with the police, with the criminal justice system. And I think this video is a good way of looking at the smaller things that happen that lead to those bigger things.
Absolutely. And the microaggressions are what you're talking about. And that look is something that's hard to explain. And I think Black men feel it. I have felt it.
Yes.
It's hard to explain unless you've received that look.
Yeah.
And I feel like this piece really sort of captures it in a way that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, and it's the feeling that you don't belong, or that you're an imposter in your own city, in your own country. I remember feeling that feeling when I was at school. I was at the University of Pennsylvania, great school in Philadelphia, and I was often treated by cops around the campus like I had to prove that I belonged there. My cousin just had that happen to her at Penn, and I loved going to Penn, but these are the things that happen, even at a place that we enjoy being at. Generally speaking, we have these experiences where we're told, I'm not sure if you belong here. And then sometimes the cops are called, and once something like that happens, those things can escalate into really dangerous situations for us. And so I think more people need to be mindful of you thinking that about people. And a lot of times it's unconscious, but I think doing this video helps bring that to light and makes you think about those things that may have been unconscious before and say, you know what, I need to change the way I think about other people and how I let stereotypes or unconscious bias inform the way I interact with my fellow human beings, in the city where I live, wherever, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, you pointed out that it is those small things that lead to the really big acts of violence that we see headlines about every day. But
Yeah.
it starts with these kind of small, sort
Yeah,
of daily
and you see it with, they do a lot of tests with police officers and things of that nature. And I don't think a lot of police officers go to work thinking I'm going to do something nefarious, I'm going to do something racist. But in the back of their mind, they assign a level of threat to black skin that they don't assign to other people. And so is when that comes into their mind, then it adds fear, it adds anxiety to any interaction that they have with us, and that often escalates into violence.
Absolutely. I want to go to the audience really quick. We have Damon Jones here. He's the VP
Yes.
of Global Communications and Advocacy at Procter Gamble. Well, now, we just talked about some of these microaggressions, and we see it in the headlines, whether it's the two black men sitting at a Starbucks and they're asked to leave, or even I just read at a Buffalo Wild Wings, white patrons didn't want to sit next to black customers, and they were asked to move. So was it the headlines? Was it the stories that you kept hearing about that made Procter & Gamble want to make this short film?
Well, it's lived experience for so many people, black men in this case, but many people who can easily be otherized. And we think that films like this spark conversation, and that conversation can be a catalyst to change. But these are very real situations. When we launched the film, some people asked, well, are you guys really just making some of that up? And it's like, no, not at all. These are real life situations. And each of the films, if you think about, black kids in swimming pools, just Google it. Your mind will be blown when you realize the history there. You look at it in retail. So these are, ripped from the headlines, but it's today. It's 2019. Racial bias is here, and we believe the first step in ending it is having really honest and candid conversation about it.
Those things you mentioned, the historical stories, P&G has a website where this is featured, but also you guys kind of connect present-day stories with historical stories, and you can see that it's sadly ingrained in our culture in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. At talkaboutbias.com, we want to take people one step deeper so they recognize it's not just a film with an actor. You can go back and learn both the historical context as well as the modern day relevance that these stories have. And again, once we become more aware of both the individual and the institutional biases, we can then go off and do something about it.
Right, because those biases lead to a lot of detrimental things in the community, whether it's funding for schools, black schools receiving less funding, or even black entrepreneurs not being able to get bank loans.
It's so many things. It's loans. It's every decision that depends on a judgment call that plays into it. We saw it in a recent Newsday expose on the real estate market in Long Island, how black folks were getting directed in certain areas that they should only live in those areas, and white customers were diverted to other areas. And this plays out every day that judgments like that are made based on the color of people's skin, and the real effects of that play out when you see the wealth gap, when you see all these other things, school segregation, residential segregation, all these other things. Though some of that is policy, and that's something we need to address. We clearly need to address that, but some of it is in these personal interactions that kind of, when they aggregate it, it means you have white neighborhoods and black neighborhoods that are separate.
You mentioned that you've done other campaigns dealing with other social issues. Have you guys been able to feel impact from those campaigns, and are you hoping to have the same effect with this one?
Well, we have seen impact. We did a campaign several years ago with Always, and it was like a girl. And it was trying to take a simple phrase that was sometimes used as an insult. You throw like a girl, or you hit like a girl. Well, imagine the impact that had. And studies really illustrate that confidence of young women and girls plummets at puberty, right? So that was a critical moment for us to turn that around and make like a girl a symbol of power and something to encourage girls to take their power back. So these campaigns can have meaningful, long-lasting impact. The other thing that we're doing is we're trying to connect it to modern-day issues that have very relevant ways. And so we've launched a partnership with National Geographic and Global Citizen, and that is really about impacting the money bail system. It's what many people don't realize is we're one of just a handful of countries around the world that still have a money bail system that if you are in jail or you're arrested, you can be locked up in jail, not convicted, and if you can afford bail, you can get out, and if you can't, you're there. And that has an impact not just on that individual, but on that family and that community. So we're really trying to educate people about some of the institutional ways biases are manifested.
I have to be honest, I really didn't know anything about the money bail system before I was prepping for this interview, and I know it's something that you've been really passionate about in prison reform in general.
Yeah.
But why has the money bail issue been something you've really put your voice to?
Well, I think a lot of us are conditioned to believe that cash bail is just a fact of life and that that's the way things are everywhere. We've seen so many episodes of Law and Order. We see the judge decide, oh, it's going to be this, and we assume they base it on, you know, the severity of the crime and the flight risk that the person poses. And we think it's so normal that we have cash bail, but it is extremely egregious that we have a cash bail system in America. Almost no other country in the world does it, and it essentially punishes you for being poor. And we have 500,000 people every day in our jails that haven't been convicted of a crime. The only crime that they've been convicted of is for being too poor to pay $500, $1,000, $1,500. And just think of how many of your fellow Americans can't afford that amount. It's a lot of people. They've done a study that
Atlantic Magazine,
yeah.
I think it was that people don't even have $400 for an emergency.
Exactly. Most Americans do not have $1,000 to spare. And if a judge sets that as your bail, that means without you being convicted, without them having to prove anything, you've essentially been convicted, and it diminishes your power, your bargaining power in the system, because the prosecutor can say, well, if you just plead to this thing that you didn't even do, you can get out now. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in jail because you can't afford $1,000. And so that's happening every single day in America, and that's why we've chosen to highlight this issue, chosen to speak out about it, educate the public, and also fight in these legislatures, fight in these governmental structures to change the law.
There's also the issue of bail bonds, which when people cannot pay their
Yes.
bail, they turn to bail bondsmen, which
Yes.
is kind of like a predatory lender. I actually have a
Yes.
quick little video from the video that you narrated that I thought really kind of expertly explained.
Yes,
So let's take
please
a
show
look.
it. As mass incarceration expanded and the bail industry's influence has grown, the bail bonds industry has become a lot like the payday loan industry. It's built on predatory business practices, preying on black people and poor communities of color, whom the criminal justice system disproportionately targets. The money bail industry transfers huge amounts of money from everyday people to large corporations.
I want to turn to the audience again. We're joined by the Honorable Everett Mitchell, the Dane County Circuit Court Judge. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much.
So I think like a lot of Americans, I didn't really fully understand this whole process, but this is kind of the world you live in every day. You see this issue. Is it a big issue? Is it something we should be concerned about?
It is a big issue because when you really think about the intersection between race and class, that's where a lot of our communities that have been really abandoned by the mainstream are really trapped. And they're trapped in these systems where they're kind of over-policed in these communities. And when they're over-policed, the moment that they're brought into the court, that's when these narratives of bias enter into the decision-making of judges. So you can't assume that just because a judge is elevated to the statute that they are free from the biases that everybody in our community has. And so the idea of, like, say, for example, super predator, that idea of what a super predator is can transform a young person who has been traumatized, abused, disconnected from any kind of system into somebody that we believe needs to be separated from the community and not be given justice. Another aspect that sometimes is disturbing to me and has always been disturbing to me is that sometimes you can have people who sit in jail even before they've been charged. Why is that important? Because a lot of times the way systems are set up, you can't even get a public defender assigned to your case until you are actually charged. So you're actually holding people in custody, not charging them, and so they don't even have access to legal counsel to be able to come into a court and advocate on their behalf. Whereas if you have money, your mommy and daddy have money, then they go get the lawyer come in and say, well, Johnny has been out, been in court and sitting in jail for 2 days, he's missing school, he needs to go play lacrosse again, all this other stuff, and they're able to get that moving. Whereas I see these poor low-income families struggling with just being able to put 2 pennies together, and then they don't have the money to be able to go and get their children out in a manner in which they thought could be consistent with what they want for them.
Yeah. So how do we navigate this? I mean, when you hear these details, it feels sort of hopeless, but I know some states are changing laws, right?
We're fighting.
Yeah.
We work with Color of Change. We work with organizations here in New York. all across the country, we're fighting to end cash bail. So some of it's happening on a district attorney level. So district attorneys have a lot of discretion in what they ask the judge for. So when you have more progressive DAs, many of them are making policy decisions that they're not going to pursue cash bail for a lot of the folks that come through there. So we're seeing that in Philadelphia and other places. Atlanta has essentially done a lot to end cash bail there. And then in the state of New York, some new laws just passed that we fought for and a lot of other activists fought for that will drastically reduce the use of cash bail, and we're really excited about that. And so we're fighting on a state-by-state level, sometimes county by county, wherever we need to fight to make the most impact. We're doing it, and other organizations around the country are doing that. And that's part of Free America, the organization I started, and our alliance with many other activists around the country.
I was reading the news in New York, and it makes sense the ways that they want to use cash bail. Don't use it for non-violent offenses. Don't use it for misdemeanors. Use it for situations that are a little more dire, perhaps.
Perhaps, but I believe we should.
Perhaps.
I believe we should end cash bail. I don't think it should exist because it necessitates that you're locked up for being poorer than someone else. Because if you can afford it and you're supposedly so dangerous, like why are we even letting you out in the first place? So I believe it should end. It shouldn't exist.
Yeah, definitely. And the more that I've read and learned, I think that's why conversations like this are so important, which is why I thought it was really cool to hear you on the Harmonize podcast as well.
Yeah.
Talking about issues of racial bias and just the importance of representation in media and in music. So do you feel that weight even more with, as your star continues to rise, to use your voice for really important issues?
This has been a part of my life since I can remember. I've always thought that justice was important. I always looked up to people who fought for justice. Even when I was a kid and we got to pick which books we read in the library, those were my superheroes. Dr. King and Harriet Tubman were my superheroes. And so this has always been something I cared about. And then when I was 15, I wrote an essay. It was for Black History Month for McDonald's of all places, and the prompt for the essay for the competition was, how are you going to make Black history? And I said, I'm going to use my career as a music superstar to change my community and use my voice to help people that need help. And so I've always thought that was part of my mission as an artist, and I'm living that dream right now.
You are living that dream. You have 2 new Grammy nominations this week.
Yeah.
The first one is for rap song performance with Higher, which,
Yes.
I think everybody was really excited this song got nominated after
Yes.
losing Nipsey.
Yes.
So does it mean something more to you that it's nominated, just given his passing?
Well, of course, I think the fact that it was with Nipsey, the fact that we shot it right in his neighborhood, he was pointing out where he grew up from, because we were up on a high-rise building near where he grew up. He was pointing out where he grew up and how much pride he had in his community. And then as a lot of us learned after he passed, he was doing so much work in that area to uplift the people that he grew up with. And he had that same thought that I had when I was young, that he wasn't just going to be a successful musician, that he wanted to use that to uplift other people. And he was really doing that. And for this to be his last video that he shot was so emotional for all of us and so poignant. But we're glad he is being honored in the way that he should be honored, because he was a great artist and a great human being.
For me, now when I listen to this song, obviously the lyrics just hit you so much.
Yeah, it's so, like, you listen, it's like, and you see some of his interviews, it's almost like he knew something was going to happen. Yeah.
You were also nominated for Legendary Christmas.
Yes.
That's that's already on repeat in my apartment, nonstop.
I wanted to make it so that it would be a timeless Christmas album. I grew up listening to those albums like, Nat King Cole and Motown Christmas and Stevie Wonder and all these albums that meant so much to me as a kid, and it meant so much to my family. We would gather around the piano and sing at my grandmother's house every year. And so this tradition of Christmas music was always important to me, and I wanted to make an album that honored that tradition and hopefully created new traditions for other folks where they would listen to that album every year. And we just did a deluxe version of the album with 4 new tracks. One of them features Kelly Clarkson. It's called Baby It's Cold Outside. We also did This Christmas, the Donny Hathaway song. We did a song called Christmas in New Orleans. And we did My Favorite Things.
Baby It's Cold Outside has,
Yes.
I mean, headline after headline.
Yes.
I have a feeling that the people who had an issue with it didn't listen to it.
They didn't listen to it.
They didn't listen to it.
They
Because
saw.
it's funny.
They saw
so
one
funny.
line that where she's talking about having a drink, and I'm like, it's your body, it's your choice. And I think they wanted it. They wanted it to be part of the political kind of culture wars. And if you listen to the song, it's really us just doing a funny update of the song. I wasn't writing it with a political essayist. I wrote the song with a comedian, Natasha Rothwell. She's on Insecure.
Yeah.
And she's written for SNL before. She's very funny and very clever. And I was like, we want to do like a new version of the song. We knew there was a controversy around a couple of the lines. I don't believe the original writer was intending for those lines to be heard and sung that way in a way that, or interpreted in the way that they are being interpreted now. But we thought it'd be fun to do a new update where we changed those lines, but also just changed a bunch of it. And we thought it'd be fun. We thought it'd be funny. And we thought it might be newsworthy too. And all three happened.
It was. I mean, just the line where she's like, my mom and dad might be mad. And he's like, why do you still live with your
I'm
parents?
like, well, wait, what do you still live at home for?
And then it's like naming the Uber driver Marvin. I was like, this is a bop. I don't know what people, like, I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah, I think
so
people
fun.
wanted something to be mad at. And I think, honestly, a lot of people are kind of engaged in this whole culture war thing every day, and it's like their thing. And I think some people are upset about the fact that men are being called to account in the Me Too movement. And I think that's a great thing that men are being called to account. I think it's a great thing that women can feel safer at work now and safer in other public places and don't have to deal with as much harassment and all these other things because men are being held accountable. But some people don't like that. And some people think there needs to be a backlash against this movement. And so I think they decided that our song would be the thing that they used to get into this conversation again. And some of them are just being idiots.
And you know, it's taking stances like that that really, I think, earned you the title as sexiest man alive.
Thank you.
Was there anything sexier than what he just said? I don't know. It's just amazing. I had to bring it up because it's been such a whirlwind week with this news. Has it hit you? Have you settled with this new title?
I mean, I don't take it literally. I don't walk around thinking I'm actually the sexiest man alive. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, it was a good photo shoot. It was a fun thing to do, and I'm grateful to people for recognizing me. And and I thought the interview talked about the things that they believe are things we should value in men, and I think that's a good thing.
I do too.
Yeah.
I also love it because it just gave us like so much John and Chrissy content as well. Your wife stands for you so hard. Does that make all of this just more fun having?
She always makes Twitter more enjoyable for everyone, including me. I'm like her biggest Twitter fan. I love looking at what she says on Twitter. I always think it's so entertaining, and I think she just understands that medium so well and knows how to interact with people in a way that is newsworthy, is funny, is very honest and true to who she is. And she didn't let me down on this one.
You didn't, and you never let us down. It's been so amazing.
Thank you for
chatting
having
with you
me
today. I mean, all the issues. Where can people learn more about the P&G campaign?
Visit us at talkaboutbias.com.
Okay.
Talkaboutbias.com. And we've been using that hashtag as well to just have more conversation about this. I think it's important for us to talk about it so that we do something about it. And it's not to make people feel attacked or feel guilty. It's to make people think about things they may not be conscious about. And once you think about it, it can help you change your own behavior.
Absolutely. I want to thank Judge Everett Mitchell and Damon Jones for joining us. And guys, put your hands together for John Legend.